And that's the reason why when this young man was asked by Father Yah to go to a certain place to preach. But did you know what he did? He refused. And maybe you know what? And who am I talking? Jonah. Now, here comes Jonah when Father Yah asked him to preach in what city? The Nineveh. Now, you know, to give you a little bit insight about history of Nineveh. Nineveh is the capital of the Assyrian Empire during their time. And if there's one thing that the Assyrian people is very renowned during their time, is they are barbaric people. They are savages in terms of their history when killing people. And this is the reason why Jonah don't want to go to Nineveh. Why? Because Jonah knows that the Assyrian people killed his people. But when Father Yah asks you to do something, is Father Yah being considerate what you're doing in this life? No, he's not. Because if we are going back to the history of man, Father Yah created them to do one thing. To do his will. Isn't that the reason why he created Adam in the first place? To take care of the garden that Father Yah gave him to be. That's the only reason why we are living in this earth. To do what Father Yah's will. If there are some things that we can do, that's the sideline of it. But don't forget the thing that is the only thing that we were asked to do. To do his will. That's his priority. So the same thing with Jonah. So when Jonah asked by Father Yah to go to Nineveh to preach, we know the story. But when Jonah made his mind, because he cannot do anything about it, otherwise Father Yah just keep on circling for him to go. Isn't right? And sometimes we are just hard-headed as Jonah until we realize we cannot do anything else except to obey Father Yah. We tried our means to do against the will of Father or against the word of Father Yah. But if Father Yah wants you to do something, baby, he will find a way. And we are lucky if we are going to find and have our senses intact and say, let your will, Father Yah. So when Jonah was given the opportunity after, Father Yah showed him that what Father Yah can do. In Jonah chapter 3 verse 4, and he said, Jonah began to enter the city of Nineveh, which is a day's journey. So he go around the city. And you know what he is preaching? He is crying and said, 40 days were given to Nineveh. 40 days were given to Nineveh. That's what he is preaching. 40 days. Now imagine if you hear that voice into your head and say, Wesley, you have 40 days. Roland, you have 40 days. Brother Steve, you have 40 days. What are you going to do about it? We're going to be panicked probably. So Jonah preached for 40 days in Nineveh. And what happened to Nineveh? In verse 5, you know what happened? Jonah chapter 3 verse 5, it says, so the people of Nineveh believe whom? Believe Father Yah. They believe on the word of Jonah that Nineveh will be destroyed in 40 days. And we know the story. Father Yah withhold his anger when he saw that the people of Nineveh, from the least to the greatest, including their animals, repent whatever they did. Now, ask ourselves, if Nineveh was given 40 days, how many days Father is going to wait for us before we find in our senses that we will do Father Yah's will? How many times are we going to break the law of Father Yah before we will come to our senses that this is our last try? How many times Father Yah is going to give us a pass and he says, this is your last one. Don't do it again. You know, David, during his time of agony, he said, blessed are those whose sin was forgiven. Isn't it? Now, you know why? Because when David committed sin, we know the story. When he took Bathsheba, his wife, when he killed Uriah as the husband of Bathsheba, and when Nathan the prophet pinpoint to David what David did as his sin, David said, forgive me and ask Father Yah for the forgiveness. You know what Nathan said? Father Yah forgive you. But know this, your son with Bathsheba will die, and the sword in your household will never go away. And David experiences the consequences of his sin. Now, don't wait for that day of reckoning for us before we change our ways. You know, Father Yah gave David time to redeem himself. But not everybody is as blessed as David. Our pastor always says, don't play Russian roulette with your life. It is true. Because that last bullet might be in the chamber before you know it. In Psalm chapter 39, verse 5, here's what it says. In Psalm chapter 39, verse 5, behold, thou hast made my days as a handbreadth. Now, still on this verse, David is saying us that our life is just as short. And it says, and mine age is as nothing before thee. Verily, every man at his best state is altogether vanity. Most of the time, if we know it, the reality of it, ask yourself, most of our time and days that we are using is for the vanity of the world. Yes or no? We aspire for a good house. We know at the end of the day it's going to burn up. We aspire for tangible things on this earth, wherein it was written at the end of the day, it will be burned up. And why we're doing is because we think these things will give us joy that we are aspiring as a human being. We forgot the old adage in the script that it says, the conclusion of the matter is this. Are we forgetting that? Whatever you do in this life, this is the conclusion that Solomon said. Right. Ecclesiastes chapter 12 verse 13. What does it say? Fear Father Yah and do His commandment. That is all that it is. Because this is the wholeness of man. Not the duty. as the King James Version says, because the word duty is just added in there, but in the beginning, it's just the whole of man. What does it mean? That is the totality of being a human being, to do the will of the Father, not his responsibility. It is the totality of man, meaning no man can become whole without Father Yah. That's why he said, you cannot do anything, our rabbi said, if you are not connected in me. It's even said, you are dead in front of me if you are not doing the will of my Father. Isn't that said? Yes. We are a living dead if we are doing against the Father, and we think we are living a life like the Jonases. In Ecclesiastes, chapter 1, verse 10, look at this word. If we understand this word, probably we are not going to spend most of our time thinking how to buy and get a Tesla car. Right, Brother David? Or probably a dually, Pastor Blackwell. In Ecclesiastes chapter 1 verse 10, it says, is there anything whereof it may be said, see, this is new? Is there still new on this earth? You know, our Pastor Isaac always say, if there is a flying car in my time, then that probably is the new one. But what Solomon is saying, what you have seen this today is the same thing as way back during their time. It's nothing new under the sun. It says, had been already of old time which was before us. Whatever comes today comes again tomorrow. It's the same cycle. We've been on this earth since our rabbi walked on this earth 2,000 years ago. That's why if you notice, the sermons in the New Testament is as good as if it was just yesterday. Because the time of the apostles when they wrote these sermons is as if it was just written yesterday. Why? Because the people way back then, 2,000 years ago, are the same people as we do. A hard-headed individual trying to find a way to make our life more comfortable than us what we have to. In Ecclesiastes chapter 3 verse 1, this is what Solomon said. To everything, there is a season. There's a time for everything, isn't it? A time for every purpose under the heaven. Now, whatever we state are we in, there's a reason why you are there for the time being. Why I'm still staying here in the United States of America, I'm not going home in the Philippines yet, I don't know why. Until then, I will stay here and probably finish my purpose, whatever that is. Why we are still alive?